Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is May 10, 2024. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. I also want to thank James Joyce for helping me meet our guest today through the Finnegan's Wake Reading Clubs. Tamar Stieber. Is that the correct way?
That is the correct way.
Tamar, it's an honor and a pleasure. Where in the heck are you calling in from?
I am calling in from, well, let's say the exurbs of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's La Cienega. It's about 20 miles south of Santa Fe.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being. Wow, it's nothing like big questions, Jerry. Uh, um, the best for a human being or for human beings?
Good question. You put all the questions into the context that you want.
Okay, I'm going to answer it both ways.
That's
For,
perfect. Yeah.
for the best thing for human beings is to be good to each other,
Yeah.
period.
Period.
The best thing for a human being, huh? God, that's a tough question. Obviously, following from the other question is to be good to each other people, to be good to other people, be good to
Yep.
sentient beings, try to do no harm, and have an open mind.
I like that. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Until COVID, it used to be movies in the theater, not on a television screen.
Wow. How cool is that?
And yeah, it's I don't go to into movie theaters anymore, which is horrible because of COVID. But even though, I spent hours, I mean like 8, 10, 12 hours a day in front of movie screens because I was a film student, and then after my classes, I would go out at night to movie theaters. I still get just a shiver up my spine when the lights start to go down,
How
and
cool.
it's just a multi-sensory experience. You're kind of bombarded with images that are huge, and with, if the sound is good, and in Santa Fe we have some extraordinary theaters. The sound is good. You've got that sensory experience. You can close off one and still get the movie by taking in the other. And it's just a very visceral thing for me, is being in a movie theater.
It's really good. I'm going to go off the script because this is a question I ask when we do salons on movies. Tell me your first memorable, impactful movie going experience. Was it in a movie theater? And do you remember the movie? What was like the first movie that hit you like you just described that? Where and was that first one?
Ooh. The first one that comes to mind, but I know it
Yeah.
wasn't the first one, was
First.
that it was a drive-in movie.
Yeah.
I was a kid, I was probably 8 years old. I was with my parents and my sister, and it was to see Hitchcock's The Birds.
Oh my God.
And it was terrifying. Um, when I came home, I was scared to open the refrigerator because I thought birds were going to come flying out and attack me.
That is so you should see when we do that in a room with like 5, 10, 20 people, it is so intriguing because everybody has one. I mean, there's no one who goes, I never did that. It's something we all did, and it can vary so much from drive-in to movie theater to, kids, if they're younger people, it's a VHS tape or it's a on their cell, whatever. So that was good. But I do suspect one of your favorite forms of information, because I know your literary um, prowess is books. So
No, it's definitely books.
did you grow up a reader, one, because your parents told you to, two, they did it as an example, or three, on your own?
Um, Combination of 2 and 3. As an example, and on my own, I remember reading Oedipus Rex when I was 10 years old. That, didn't understand most of it. My parents never censored us. So I read The Valley of the Dolls when I was 10 years old because that's what my mother was reading. My
Wow.
mother wasn't a very literary reader. My father probably was more so. And yeah, there were just books everywhere. If I got bored, I'd pick them up. I still remember going to the library. I loved going to the library, the smell.
Yeah.
Um, and
Same.
it always, just bowled me over in a good way. I loved the smell of libraries and going to story hour and having people read to me. I still love having people read to me. I listen to books on tape sometimes,
Yeah.
and it brings me back to childhood in a way, but I'm reading different kinds of books or listening to
Yeah.
different kinds of books.
Really good. Tamar, why do you think people collect information? Why do humans collect information?
Collect information and not just books.
Yeah, because
Um
it comes from this through line. I asked you, what's your favorite form of information? You said movies, then we got into books. I know you're into music too, so you have several favorite forms of information, but just in general, why do humans collect information?
When you say collect it, you mean have it in your own domicile. It's so you can pick it up whenever. Why I started getting books. I didn't want to have to go to the library. This was before internet
Yeah,
to get my information. I wanted to think of a question and go into wherever I had a book, Britannica, and
yeah,
try to get an answer. Um, I think it's to have it at hand. I
yeah,
mean, you may we kind of don't need it. And there's a difference between need and want.
and
We don't
that's
need it anymore because of the internet. You just pick up your phone, Google something, hopefully trust your source.
yeah,
But there's still something wonderful, the tactile nature
yeah.
of a book, a magazine, or whatever. I love even my own books. I like the smell of them, cracking them open, and being able to see it in front of you without having it mediated by a screen.
But you also kind of anticipated this. The next question is this need or want to collect information, gather it, have it, use it? Is it more innate or more invented for us to get information?
I'm thinking that okay. I believe in the tabula rasa.
Yeah,
Um, and that everything you do is learn. I mean, the instinct for survival, that's another story, but in terms of that, I mean, I think there is an instinct to want to know or need to know things, and that probably comes from survival. Which plants are going to kill you? And then somebody eventually thought of making pictures and making a book so everybody would have it, but um I think it's probably learned to want to have it around you. I don't
that's
know,
amazing.
Jerry.
Well,
I don't
that's amazing because 80 to 90% people say, why do is it more innate or more information? They go survival. They say that's survival right off the bat. I mean, that's how, and it doesn't mean that because 80% say it, it's right or wrong. I'm able to sort of get these patterns from what people think and say, the commonality. Like Lily Tomlin said, reality is just a collective hunch. It's sort of
I'm
like
not really
survival is a collective hunch
I
answer.
guess I guess so. And the
But
fact
you said this thing, tabula rasa, everything you do is, and then you didn't finish the sentence. What is that?
learned,
Oh, is
learned.
learned. Look at that.
Yeah, including, goodness or,
Right, right.
being,
Yeah,
a generosity, whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, I
No,
do
that's
believe
amazing because I met this kid at age 10, and then I saw him 4 years later at 14. He was raised a Buddhist. I says, "Well, what have you learned being raised a Buddhist?" And he says, "Not to hate."
huh.
And
No,
I was amazed that he said he learned not to hate because are we culturally, I'm not asking this, but I'm thinking out loud, are we culturally taught to hate? It's sort of like, you kinda get this thing, or is it hating innate in us?
we were talking about this at the, weight group the
Yeah,
other night, about war.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, tabula rasa, well, from my perspective, when you're born, it's just all about me. It's gimme, gimme, gimme. I
yeah,
see this from my dogs also.
yeah,
They'll fight each other for who's going to be the first out the door, who's going to be the first one to get their bowl of food or whatever. And that's kind of the innate thing. And that's the survival thing, is that you
yeah,
want what's good for you or for the pack.
yeah.
Um,
But
but
it
but
could be play. See, again, we're anthropomorphizing that word on the dog, and they could say, "We're not fighting, we're playing to see who gets there first." Because they sort of chaw at each other, but they don't bite and hurt each other.
sometimes they do. Sometimes mine do, because they're always fighting for
Right.
the alpha position. And
The
it's
alpha position, yeah. But again, you're anthropomorphizing words on dogs. They don't
well, I'm
have
doing it. Oh, that's true. You're right. It's
They don't have English language. They hear it, and we think they love us when they look in you in the eyes, but they might not have a word for love. They might just go, "Come on, man, go give me some more food."
because it's, again, gimme, gimme, gimme.
Give
Okay,
me
so remember we were talking about language, that
Yeah,
it was humans that, I don't remember who said that, but NPR just had this piece about sperm whales. And
yeah,
they have a sophisticated language. And
yeah,
I think sperm whales have probably been around longer than people. So
yeah.
I'm not sure I'm not a scientist. I'm not sure I accept the fact that humans were the first to have language.
That's where you're anticipating a lot. Let's move on because everything will come full circle. We'll be able to suss out more. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yes. I'll say
Yeah.
with yes, and
Okay.
vice versa.
Yeah. I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
Don't know what I until I s well, I was gonna say it, but just even
Interesting.
now, I'm hesitant, so I'm not sure what I think even though I just said it.
That's that's
Until I say it and then think about it some more.
yeah. Well, that's
But
perfect
the other
because
thing, as I know as a writer, I don't know what I think. I mean, if I try to write it in some kind of prosaic way or whatever, it's bullshit. I have to stop myself and say, "What are you trying to say?" Just
yeah.
spit it out on the paper without fancy words, without anything, and then you can embellish later. So, I guess I have to say I don't know what I think until I say it simply. Otherwise, it goes around and around. It's like the movie 8 and a Half.
So check this out. After people say their answer, most people go till I do it or I experience it. And they say a million different things, but a lot of them say till I do it or experience it. After they say that, here's what I say. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. So
Oh,
you
interesting.
like anticipated my 2 retort comments after the person fills in the blank. Because mine is tomorrow, you'll love mine. I says, I don't know what I think until I ask someone else what I'm supposed to think.
I remember one of my many ex-boyfriends said to me, I said to him once, I said, somebody said something or did something to me, and I said, I think I should be offended. And he just thought that was hysterical.
There I
It's
go.
you are or you're not. You don't have to
Gotcha.
think you should be. And it's like, I was kind of asking permission to be offended.
Well, check this cliche out. It's perfect. It's a flip. Women know, men suppose. Now, it's a funny cliche, but indeed, what it is really saying, I think, is women are more intuitive and they go with their intuition, whereas men are more linear and go, oh, this is the way it is, period. They don't say, oh, there's a bigger. So it was funny. He was being linear and you were being intuitive. Like, I am
Well,
not.
it's really you're bringing that up, Jerry, is so interesting because I don't know. There's this linguist. Her name's Linda Tanner, who wrote a book called "Talking from 9 to 5."
Yeah.
And it's about the different ways that men and women speak and why women keep hitting the glass ceiling. And she also extrapolated this out to college students that um, men, when they speak at least, know, and women suppose. Men are much more confident when they
She says the
speak.
exact opposite of my
No, she says that women, that men are of what you said, that men appear, at least they have more confidence when they speak, whereas women tend to qualify it with
yeah,
I may be wrong, but this may be stupid,
yeah,
but I'm not sure if I'm saying this right,
yeah,
and but whether that is how they really think. In other words, this is how they put themselves out. The
yeah,
men appear more
yeah,
confident. I guess that
yeah,
what is that in astrology? And not really into astrology, but you've got the moon, sun, and your sun sign, your moon sign, and your what's the other one? And that's the one that's supposed to be the way you appear to other people.
appear, yeah,
And so men tend to be more confident. They'll assert
yeah,
things, and
yeah,
women tend not to.
yeah. Well, it's funny because that's gonna make me seek out, where did I get that? Women know, men suppose. I've been saying that for years, and all I do is say, "Oh, there's a cliche that goes that," and I just say it sometimes, but I don't know the root because she is sort of saying men appear to know
Or
and women
pretend they know.
pretend, yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so this is good. Now you kinda answered this, but we gotta ask it. Can humans think without language?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I mean, you're talking about that verbal language.
Well, again, you put it in the context you want. When I say, "Can humans think without language?" then you can put in qualifiers because tomorrow, basically, it's me and you versus the wordings on the questions. So when
Hmm.
you say, "Oh, I'm gonna switch this verb or this noun or add this adjective," totally, I'm open to that. Tangents, anecdotes, stories. I'm open to anything, but it's really we're kind of playing and molding the wording on the questions. They're not set in stone. So, yeah, you can say, can humans think without verbal language if you want?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I mean, people who can't hear, and Helen Keller when she was a kid,
yeah,
filled with emotions, but
yeah,
unable to express those. She could make noises.
yeah,
So I mean, it depends if you consider noises language.
yeah,
Um, they can be. Yeah, for me, the answer is yes.
yeah. Because Chomsky says a language is not just words, It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. So, my question is, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I, there's body language there. When I say sign language, I'm thinking about being in countries where I don't speak the language, or what little bit of the
Yeah,
language I have is not working. I don't have enough vocabulary.
yeah.
You can. It's like charades. You can act
Charades
it
is a
out.
great charades is a great word. Act it out. Yeah. So, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think that we're more feeling beings, and I mean, I think that's how we start, because our thoughts, and I'm thinking from infancy, from birth, that first we feel, and then we learn to put concepts on those. So we do think, but we have to learn that. And then some of us, and again, that's our, whatever we've experienced in life, are more head than heart.
Really good. One thing is, you quoted the wake without probably knowing it, because the one of the greatest Joyceans, Sam Sloat, said, he summarized the wake in the line, "First we fall, then we feel."
Oh, okay.
And
No,
I always mix it up. I go, well, you could say first we feel, then we fall. So I love that it's like I love to flip it, but you actually said first we feel without going, and that's a quote from the wake.
no, I didn't know I was quoting the wake, but I can
Right.
pretend.
Yeah. But here's the two things I add is Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? It's like people meditate. They go, okay, think about not thinking.
It's impossible. I've done Zen meditation.
Yeah.
And if you can't turn your brain off, you just do
Right.
whatever, count your breaths, and then you
Right.
lose track after the number two, and then you start all over again. It's impossible. I always call it, the movies in our head. You just
The
can't
movie in our
turn
head,
them
yeah,
off.
yeah, and then the other one is the bumper sticker on a car in my street, it says, "Don't believe everything you think," and I go, "Well, you could say, 'Don't believe everything you feel.'"
And but I think that's legitimate. Don't believe everything you feel.
I think they're both legitimate, but we want to feel. Okay, so here's 2 Alan Turing questions, 1950s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
Alan Turing, the guy
Yeah,
who did, oh,
the mathematician
yeah.
computer. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, what a terrible end he had. Um, anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What was the
Yeah,
question?
the question is thinking a function of the soul?
Jerry, I'm not sure I believe in a soul.
Yeah,
So that may not be, I mean, anything's a good question.
yeah,
Um, so I'm not a very spiritual person. It doesn't mean I'm not a good person or I'm trying to be good, but
yeah,
it's nothing to do with spirituality. But anyway, so I don't know what a soul is. I don't have a clue. I believe when you die, you just die,
yeah.
and hopefully fertilize the earth, or as I said in the wake group, my animals will probably eat me, which is good. Somebody's getting nutrition. Okay, so does thinking fertilize the soul? Was that how you put it?
Is thinking a
Oh,
function of the soul.
a function of the soul. I'm going to have to say, since I don't really believe in a soul, I have to say no.
That's fine.
Um,
That's fine. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
I didn't used to. No, actually, I don't think they can think.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I have a Roomba, a new Roomba vacuum.
yeah.
Um, and I've named her Stella, so when I yell at her, I can sound like Marlon Brando and Streetcar
That
Named
is
Desire.
great.
But I don't. She doesn't care. No, she doesn't think, because when it gets stuck on a rug, it talks to me on my phone, and it said, "I Roomba is at the edge of a cliff," and
Oh my God.
isn't that
And then
funny? And I have to go rescue her. So no, I don't think machines can think. I think they can put together algorithms. I mean, like HAL in 2001.
yeah, yeah,
Um, not yet, anyway.
yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Meaning,
Yeah. Viktor Frankl says in Man's Search for Meaning that happiness tends to not last and meaning does.
I've not read Frankel, but that makes perfect sense. And no, happiness, I think, is far more transient than meaning. I think meaning has much more staying power.
They're really good words. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating
Ooh, Jerry, you're hitting at one of my questions about life. It's really one of my questions about death.
it? Yeah.
This just a question that plagues me. The moment of death. Do you know
That you're
that you
dying?
right? I mean, if you're sick, you're dying. That
Yeah.
could be over. But the very moment, like when I'm gonna just metaphorically, when the lights go out, do you know
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I I don't have an answer for you. I just don't know.
Right.
Please repeat the
But
question.
wait, but I want to tell you something about Tim Leary's and lucid dreaming when we're done. But first of all, it's are we as the brain more detecting consciousness or creating it? That
Okay,
was the
all
yeah.
right. I think it's more creating it.
We're creating.
We're
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
creating it. And I don't know why humans create such complicated realities.
Just
We
chill out, man, and we'll be happy. But it's funny because what you brought up is my friend told me, Leary said if you learn how to lucid dream, that when you die, your body doze out, but your mind kicks in for another 6 minutes or stays in conscious for 6 minutes. So you can direct your path. Like, I don't know if this is true, but I think it's interesting. It's sort of like if you lucid dream, you lay down and take a nap in the middle of the day and go, oh, yeah, take me back to that hillside where everything's lush and beautiful. And then you sort of fall into the nap. So I think that's what lucid dreaming is. I don't really know, but it seems as though we can direct our path a little after we die. Who knows?
I
Yeah.
mean, how would he even know that
You
unless
can't, you don't know it.
exactly.
I'm going to send you this quote that I use all the time. It's like, we don't know. No one knows what happens after they die. There's the white light and the people who come back. But because we don't know, things exist only in relationship. This is a main McLuhan thing. Things only thing. So uh, will there ever be silence? Well, you can't answer it because we've never had complete silence. Even when John Cage went in that chamber, he heard his heart beating in his central nervous system working. So even though you're in a chamber where there's no sound, you still cannot escape sound, but we're not aware, like me and you aren't hearing our hearts beating right now. So because of that, we will never die because we don't have a relationship of knowing what is after death.
No, that's interesting.
But we think we do because the body's gone. But think of the people before language when someone died. Did they go, "Oh, he just died," or the baby came out of the woman? They go, "Well, how'd that happen?" Oh, they don't know that something happened 9 months ago. And did they have science? And they go, "Oh, you were the one who impregnated me. I'm going to have your baby now." So we didn't know birth or death until we invented words. I mean,
No, I think that's really true, Jerry, that words create our concepts.
yeah,
Well, okay, wait. Because I think we have concepts before we have words for them, and then we learn the words to put on those concepts. But later on, when we have vocabulary, I think we can create concepts through words. And I mean, that's what reading is all about.
yeah.
Somebody
But
else's words creates concepps for us,
yeah,
a
and
reader.
then everything's in flux, so it's always changing. We go, "Oh, no, that's an apple." Well, no, that's not an apple anymore. You'll go, "No, that's an apple." That's
Yeah,
like, back to Lily Thomas, like, it's a collective hunch. We think words work, and they do work pretty good, but
pretty
they
good.
don't pretty good. We're using them right now. Okay, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Ooh, I don't. I suspect the speed of thought, but that's just a suspicion. I'm not a scientist.
Well,
I don't
that's
know. I
we'll
could
check.
go, I could look this up and see how quick the synapses work when you have a thought, um and I don't know. My hunch, to use Lily
Yeah.
Tomlin's word, is that it's the speed of thought.
Well, guess what? There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right.
Oh, okay, yay.
Okay, Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer responded and said, "You can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?"
To dismantle the master's house?
Well, good question. Let me just clarify again. You put the questions in the context you want. So, because I opened some of these questions with cute quotes, it doesn't mean you even have to apply them. And basically, the question is, what tool do you gravitate towards? And you can add the word new if you want, and you can add dismantling the master's house if you want. And
Hmm.
she's a poet, she's probably speaking metaphorically. Well, she's probably talking about white supremacy, but it's just a setup for, you know, a question. So you can it again, these are just prompts. You don't have to answer the question. It's just
Yeah. I'm just well, the word tool for me is tough because I love physical tools. I hate shopping for clothes or anything, but put me in a hardware store and I am a happy camper. I love tools. I mean, from I have a steel chainsaw, to my loppers, to just the perfect drill bit. I love tools. Um, okay, so let me get away from the literal tool and go to a
that's it. You can
metaphorical
be you can
tool.
be metaphorically or literal. You can be both or either. Yeah.
All right, so what tool do I gravitate toward? Besides my new Roomba, I love my new Roomba. It's actually an old Roomba. I got it secondhand. Um, oh, I don't know. Uh Jerry, I don't know if I have an answer.
Okay, we'll go on because these come back. What new toy do you suggest?
A new toy. I mean, I kind of like the old toys, like, yo-yos or
Yo-yo is a perfect
yeah,
answer. I don't get that.
well,
Beautiful.
because I like toys that don't necessarily need any kind of um uh input from anybody else but ourselves. So like, I don't want an electronic toy.
Yeah,
I have things in my house like a hand grinder for my coffee in
yeah,
case, somebody kills the electric grid. I wouldn't be able I have to have my coffee in the morning. It has to
yeah.
be hand ground. So it's like a kid with Christmas or they love the boxes. They don't really care what's inside of them.
That's good. Okay, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Oh my God, the ever expanding universe. I stole that from Woody Allen. Um, um, serious. Okay, are we going to get into politics?
You can do whatever you want
I
with that.
worry that Donald Trump will be elected president.
Yeah,
That's that keeps me up at night.
yeah, scary.
It's
Okay,
terrifying.
okay, we're
Not
gonna.
just because of who he is, but
Yeah,
because all these people would vote for him.
it's very scary. Okay, McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, tomorrow, I ask you the question that Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I think there's so much sensory input
Yeah,
in our lives. Um, that it's like, what, we only use a very small portion of our brains. We can only deal with so much. We can only remember so much. I think the louder the distraction, it can hide other things that are more subtle. You know, I,
exactly.
I I think humans tend to go for the glittery stuff
Yep,
first, whatever the what sparkles or what's loudest.
totally. Do artists have moral obligation?
Um, I wish I could say yes, but some of the artists I admire most, not as humans, but because of their art, had their moral compass was not where I would like it to be.
Yeah,
And, I'll use Wagner as an example. His music is sublime. He was not a good person.
yeah,
So, should they? Maybe.
yeah,
And it sounds wishy-washy. If they did, would their art be what it is?
yeah,
If if they were striving towards some, moral code, would they be, producing, some truly divine stuff? And again, Wagner is just an example.
yeah. No, it's a good example, and it's leads to the next question. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Um, hmm. I think I'm probably more afraid of old ideas because the old ways were not always good ways. And maybe this makes me an optimist, but I hope that new ideas are from a more enlightened place. That's a hope. I
Yeah,
can't, say that it truly is, but that's what I want to. That's what I'm going to choose to believe.
it's good. Can you conjure up your earliest memory? Now, you told us your earliest movie memory, but just
Yeah.
your earliest memory in general, one of them, if not the first, one of your earliest memories.
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. I was thinking about this memory just came to my mind the other day. I was probably just 2 or 3 years old, and I was on the beach, probably Coney Island, because I was born in Brooklyn, and I had fallen down into the water. I was, like the water was a 16th of an inch deep or something like that, but I couldn't somehow get myself up. And I have no idea where my parents were, but it was some strange lady, some strange woman that noticed me flat on my stomach with my face in the water. I didn't feel like I was drowning. I but she picked me up and took me out of the water. I have absolutely no idea if I was drowning. I felt drowning in a metaphorical sense. I was in a place and I didn't know how to get out of it, and I knew it probably wasn't good. And these were not verbalized thoughts because I think I might have been pre-verbal. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
she just and I don't know if I would have drowned or not. She just picked me up and sat me down on the sand. That's my
Wow.
earliest memory.
Wow. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Hmm. Um, I think memory, if it's an emotional memory, I think it's more of a curse. If it's an intellectual memory, I think it's I don't really believe in blessings, but I think if it's an intellectual memory, it's probably a better thing. I would prefer to have intellectual memories than emotional ones.
Good division, really articulate. I appreciate that. Tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Okay, my immediate family. I mean, I have role models of people I shouldn't be from my family. And I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail. But a sibling who taught me, didn't, who unknowingly taught me how not to be.
Yeah,
This person's not a good person. Um, my father was probably my role model, and that's for better or for worse in terms of how to think. It's sort of my intellectual role model. He was Viennese. He had a very classical European education. He always said I had a classical American education. I know nothing about geography or history. I tried to write that, but he was a little bit of a chauvinist, my father. I don't mean a male chauvinist. I mean a European chauvinist.
yeah,
Um, so I think my father was my intellectual role model,
it's good.
and also, yeah, would learn bad things from my father too, like a little bit of a temper. Oh,
Temper, yeah.
yeah, I've toned that down, but yeah, it'd
And
be my
now, same question outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
Oh, the impact's completely different. I mean, a lot of intellectual role models, but um, people who taught me what it means to be kind and generous by being that way to me.
Wow.
Because I did not grow up in a very um, generous family in terms of welcoming people into our world or our dinner table or our home or anything like that. And I had to learn not to be that way. I had to learn to be open and welcoming. And I learned that from people being that way to me, the kindness of strangers,
Wow.
to quote Blanche Dubois or paraphrase her.
That's yes. So now, did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Well, we're Jewish, but not religious at all, more cultural Jews. My
Yeah.
mother was a child star on the Yiddish stage, and she sang live on Yiddish radio. My father was mostly agnostic because he survived the Holocaust. His parents died in one of the death camps, not even a work camp.
Wow.
Um, I think he gave up on religion, and so it wasn't stressed in our house. We were cultural Jews.
Yeah. Do you pray?
No,
If God
I'm an atheist.
exists, if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh, I don't believe in God, Jerry, but I'll just say if there is something out there, what would I like it to say? Um, to me personally? I
It
mean,
is a
if there is something out there, I know, what I'd like it to do, but what would I like it to say? Uh, huh. I
I
don't
should
I honestly, I never think about
okay,
this.
it's funny because it is a stupid question, but you
No.
almost have me convinced that I should change the wording and say, "What would you like God to say or do to you after you die?" Because it is saying kind of implies, some sort of communication. But let's just move on, because the next question is as stupid as that one.
Okay, well,
Do
no, I'm gonna give you an answer to it
Okay,
anyway. If
go
it's
ahead, go ahead.
it's
Sorry.
something or if God's gonna say something to me. Was it Walter Winchell that used to say goodbye and good luck? Or good night and good luck? I think it was Walter Winchell, I'm not sure. It was a
Good
very
night
famous
and good luck.
good night and good luck. I think that was Walter Winchell.
I'll look it up, but that is really good. That's what God could say to you.
That's all I need to hear.
Yeah, beautiful. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Oh, no, I think evil people exist. I don't think evil exists outside of people, because I
Yeah,
don't really think there are evil animals.
yeah,
Well, okay, I might have to qualify that. I have a really mean cat.
yeah,
Really mean. But no, I don't think she's evil. She
yeah,
was feral, and so she's just doing what she learned to do. No, I don't think evil exists outside of people.
yeah,
And okay, not just any sentient being, but people.
yeah. Because the real hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So again, it's a lot of prompts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think that's partially true. Um, 'Cause but it can make your enemy meaner, if you don't respond. But it's true. You do empower them. And most of us are just hardwired not to be able not to acknowledge them. We all go away from a fight thinking, I should have said this. I mean, verbal,
Right.
should have said this, should have done that,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But I think most of us react. Humans are reactive.
Yep.
Um, the better humans among us don't. I am not one of the better humans among us. It's not for lack of trying, Jerry, but I react.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't like it when I do, but I do.
But I think when people say that, I go, you have to be true to your emotions. If you feel, I mean, reaction then you're like denying yourself this, you want to get it out of your system. You've got to do it some way. It's just how my sister taught me a great line. She says, key to a successful relationship is how you deal with what you don't like about the other person. So if you scream and yell, that might not be effective, but if you do it in a sort of persuasive way and let's sit down and talk. So, anyways, what would you do? Like if you had, a kid or a younger person came home and they said, someone's bullying me, what do you tell them? How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy?
This is one of the reasons I don't have children. Um, I mean, I couldn't imagine bringing up a child.
Yeah.
It's so complicated. But okay, what would I
But I
advise?
mean, even if it's not a child, like a peer of yours has having a falling out or something, or they're saying this person's being an evil, like you use the word harm, they're being harmful to me. How do you advise their approach?
Okay, a few ways. just sometimes, and I have actually advised people on this, just I'm not going to engage with you. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I had a friend who she was married to an abusive man,
Yeah.
and she ignored him, and it did not help.
Yeah.
And, you know, just told her to just get out. I mean, it was actually her house.
Yeah.
Um, or to kick him out. I'm a firm believer in uh getting rid of toxicity,
Yeah.
whether it's black mold or a toxic person,
Yep.
to just get them out of your life.
Yeah.
And there were no children, so it wasn't a matter of
Yeah.
sticking together for the children. But
Yeah.
anyway, she didn't heed my advice.
Yeah. Well, here's the follow-up. Nassim Taleb said, games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally or socially wrong? So the basic question, again, it's a lot of prompts. The basic question is, does punishment work?
To an extent, it works either as a deterrent, not for everybody, and maybe,
Yeah.
but at least if you're thinking about, for example, prison, it works outside of prison because the person
Not, yeah,
isn't in society to do that.
yeah,
Um, I do not believe in capital punishment. And it's not because I don't believe that some people don't deserve to die. I just really don't trust the government to make that decision.
decision. Yeah,
Okay, but so it's a deterrent for some people. It's not for
yeah,
others. Um, I I think it's warranted in some cases. And for example, we were talking about, tabula rasa, the gimme gimme of a child. If the gimme gimme is wrong, or you might have to punish a child to so the child can realize that it's wrong, or I'm not going to benefit from doing this anymore.
yeah,
Um, huh. So the simple answer is yes. I think punishment does work
yeah,
to a certain extent, and in some cases.
yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, certainly you can do both, but when you go when you go into a theater, a live theater or a movie theater, you get well, in a movie, literally, you get angles
Yeah,
that are different from the ones that you might be looking at. In a theater, you get more metaphorical angles, and both
yeah,
of those you
yeah,
get somebody else's picture, somebody
yeah,
else's ideas, which could expand, and they expand your mind with someone else's thoughts.
yeah. Tamar, walk us through just briefly your tipping point. So, I mean, generally, what I understand is you pursued well, you were a film student, but were you pursuing writing before you became a film student? So where's your tipping point and go, I want to write? You're reading stuff and they go, I want to write. Then where's your tipping point? Well, I want to go to film school. Then where's your tipping point? I want to be a journalist. Let's just do those three to start.
Okay. Well, writing for me is never pleasurable. It's pulling teeth. The pleasure is I have written, not I am writing. Although then there's, a million drafts, terrible self-editor. I
But
remember
where was
writing.
that tipping point? You're growing up reading, you're like, well, I'm going to write. I
I
mean,
never thought about that.
you
I
never
felt
did.
No, I felt compelled to write sometimes. I remember the first time I was, maybe 15, I saw my first byline. I didn't even expect it to be published,
Yeah.
and it was a response to it was in the New York Times book review, in response to a review, I think it was of Betty Friedan's book. Was The Second Sex? Was that No, that's Simone de Beauvoir. I don't remember which one it was, and I got really angry at the reviewer. I thought it was a very sexist review, and so I wrote a letter to the editor of the New York Times book review, and I didn't even know if it was published. I was working in a library, and one of the librarians said, "I loved your letter," and it's like, oh, I quickly ran over to the book review, and there I saw my letter with my name. They didn't have a clue that I was a kid. Um, and so it was the ego more than the act of writing. I loved seeing my
Yeah.
byline. So that's
Published in
very,
the New York Times. That was well done. But
and
then did you study writing, creative writing, or journalism in high school or college?
no, in college, I studied journalism a little bit. I took a few courses at Berkeley. Um, and I didn't study it. And with film, I just kind of got into it because I thought that would be a fun major. And not just because I'd be watching movies all the time, but then it turned out to be really very mind expanding. It was a completely um, uh, full education and multidisciplinary, multi languages, but in the humanities. It was in comparative literature, it was in rhetoric, it was in French, it was in Italian. And so you're getting more information than just what's in the movie. And the teachers are from all over the world. And so you got a cultural education, you got a literary education, you were reading, doing books, comparing books to literature. That was one of the courses. And I didn't make any decisions anytime. I sort of just slipped into it. I guess that makes me a dilettante.
But are you going, "Oh, when I graduate, I can make my living being this." Are
Oh
you
my
think
God, no. No, it was all, uh, I went back to college when I was 30. Took me about, I don't know, 15 years or more to graduate, because I'd go to school and I quit, go to school, quit. Um, and it was Berkeley that I got my degree, and I just wanted to be a student for the rest of my life. I just wanted
that
to
that's sort of
absorb.
but
And
you're saying you when you graduated, what'd you graduate with? Film degree or
it was film theory.
film?
Well,
That's what I
what are you
thought.
gonna do with that except teach?
It's
I actually went on to do comparative literature. I was in their graduate
right.
comparative literature program, but I ran out of money. I had to quit and get a job. And
Yeah.
so I just had to stop my studies. And so I never, and the normative time at Berkeley to get your PhD was like 7 years. So I never thought about what I was going to do afterwards. I was just eating up what I was doing at the moment.
Then what is your career now? You're a dog handler. I mean, you're is that what you do for a living? You care
Oh,
for
no, not for a living. That's all volunteer, search
that's
and rescue.
volunteer.
Completely volunteer. I editor, also volunteer. I'm retired. I'm a retired editor. I wound up working for the state, which was the most horrible job I've ever had. But I have a pension anyway. And I was an editor for the bill drafting agency of the state legislature.
For,
Um,
for governmental bills, that was your
yeah,
career, right?
laws, the state
Yeah,
laws.
state laws.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so now, yeah, that I'm editor for the Wagner Society of Santa Fe, and
right.
that's volunteer. I do some computer stuff. One of my clients is a retired water attorney for New Mexico, where water is really complicated.
Yeah,
Because you can own the property and not own the water rights underneath it, or the mineral rights for that matter.
yeah,
Or so anyway, not to bore you, but he has asked me to digitize all of his water files, which includes some stuff from the 17th century. He's got documents from the 17th century where the King of Spain is granting, water rights, or the King of Mexico, or land grants, which of course they had no right to grant because it belonged to the Native Americans, but that's
yes,
another story. And so, there's been fights in New Mexico about water because it's
yeah,
desert, for literally hundreds of years. And
yeah,
so I'm putting all of that stuff on, I'm digitizing it so he can give access to, like, the law library or students of water or whatever. That's one of my gigs.
yeah. Well,
Stuff like that.
let's go with editor. So let's say, you've been an editor. That's sort of what that's your in these two questions, and then we'll jump into Joyce.
All right.
A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process as an editor?
Oh, well, if I'm editing, okay, because there's writing and there's editing. My
Yeah,
intention as an editor is to try not to get in the way of the writer's intention.
yeah,
Um, and it depends, mostly what I do is nonfiction. Um, and I, as an editor for the Wagner Society, for example, Yoko Arthur is the founder. She's the writer. She's the publisher. She's Japanese. English is not her native language, although she writes far better than most native English speakers that I know. She's really an excellent writer. And she says she has no ego in her writing, and I can go at it. And I do. And it's fun. I
so that's where you can be creative.
That's where I can be creative.
Well,
It's
that's a good example of this. So the next question is, and you could expand with that, is Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your of your reader when you're being creative as an editor?
okay, as an always, but much more so when I was a reporter. I
You're
always thought of the
thinking of
reader.
your reader. Yeah,
Always my thoughts, because I am reporting what I am witnessing, or
yeah,
an event or a meeting or something like that. Always in my mind is, when someone who was at that same event that I am reporting on and writing about reads what I write, will they say, "Yup, she got it"?
yeah,
Will they recognize what they saw?
yeah,
So, as a journalist, it's always in my mind.
yeah,
If I'm writing fiction, which I've dabbled in, um, I I have it less in my mind. If I'm writing, I've got my father's memoirs, um, which they're very difficult for me. I can't read them yet. because they have to do with, the Holocaust, and what happened to his family and coming to this country and all this stuff. And the older I get, the harder it is for me to
Yeah.
read stuff. It's funny because when I was young, I could read or watch anything. I didn't have any. The emotion came afterwards, not before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a
Um,
lot.
and so if I were going to be, and he had asked me, he's dead, to work on those, I would need to have my father, the writer, in my mind. And was this his intention? Is
Yeah.
this what he meant? How much literary license can I take?
Yeah.
Um, for my own, if I ever did my own memoirs, like why bother? Who would care? Um, I would feel less constrained. And I always think, oh, maybe I should do it as fiction so I can
Yeah.
do whatever I want.
Yeah. You can. It's an amazing thing because that flip is creative writing teachers say. Write what you know. And it's like, or that's what writing is, using your imagination to make stuff up. And there's
Exactly.
million ways in between. But let's jump into Joyce. And I wanted to apply those two questions to Joyce in a second. But first, what's your history with Joyce? Did you start reading Joyce in high school or college on assignments or on your own? And then what led you? Are you a Joycean who thinks The Wake is the best? Or are you like all Joyce resonates with you? What's your history with Joyce?
Okay, so I think I read Portrait of the Artist. I think that was the first thing I ever read, and it just blew me away. And I read it.
As an assignment or on your own?
I think it was on my own first, and then I reread it in college. Um, and I knew, without knowing why, that there was something, it was the depths of it. It just, grabbed me by the stomach and pulled
Yeah.
it out like an alien. Do you remember the movie
Yeah.
Alien? Yes. Um, so then I had to do a comparative literature piece on portrait and Kant, and I don't remember. Was it Kant? No, it was Nietzsche. Um, and it might have been Twilight of the Gods. I don't remember. But I also took a course, and I think it was with John Bishop, and I didn't even know who he was.
Wow.
I think it was with him. It was a graduate course on Ulysses. And I was so intimidated. And everybody was trying to impress him and trying to outdo each other. And I dropped out of the course. I just said, "Oh my God, I can't do this." Um, I I knew that Ulysses was one of my goals. Before I die, I have to read Ulysses. It's like, I've got
Yeah.
to um, learn how to drive a stick shift. That was when I was a kid. That was one of the things I had to do. And of course, I do drive a stick shift, and, learn photography and that sort of thing. Reading
Yeah.
Ulysses was on that list before I die. And so this course just terrified me. Both the
Wow.
teacher, less so the teacher, but the students intimidated me.
Yep.
And so I did not finish the course, but I knew I wanted to read this book, and I knew I couldn't do it on my own. So finally, um, here in Santa Fe, I joined my first James Joyce group with Elaine Mingus and Adam Harvey, and I, I got the bug. I was bitten, and then I think I've read Ulysses 4 or 5 times, once on my own and 4 times through with groups, or 3 times 2 with groups. It is my Bible. Everything you need to
Wow.
know about
You're
in
more
the
Ulysses person than a Wake person?
I am. The wake
I
scares
didn't
me.
know.
The
I
wake
did.
scares me.
But
And
let me just go back because I asked both Elaine and Adam all these questions years ago. I actually Elaine put me up at her house, I think, and she participated in a Joyce event at the movie theater that I hosted once there. But, very good, but when you started with Elaine and Adam, was it Ulysses or was it The Wake or was it Joyce in general?
no, when I started, it was 1 hour of Ulysses, and then we'd
Oh,
stop and we'd do 1 hour of the wake.
oh, how many years ago was that?
Oh god, 13, maybe longer. Let me think.
Yeah,
94. Oh my god, it could be 20 years.
20 years ago, wow.
Yeah, and, the wake appropriately it didn't matter. I think we were on page 500 something,
Yeah,
who cares? No, it wasn't 500, it was earlier on, it was like 257, I'm just making this up,
yeah,
but it made no difference because it starts in the middle of a sentence and it ends in the middle of a sentence and it goes around,
yeah,
so it really made no difference where we started, but I had fun with it. It was more playful.
yeah.
Uh,
Wait, more
and
playful than Ulysses or just more playful in you're saying The Wake is more playful or
The Wake is more Ulysses to me is one of the funniest books I've ever read.
right,
Um, and I mean, The Wake is very funny too, but
right,
there's so many layers
yeah,
between the words on the page and the humor, and there's
yeah.
different levels of humor. I
But
don't mean different levels. Okay, go ahead.
which one are you saying is more playful? Were you saying one of the 2 was more
Yeah,
play
I would say, um, The Wake is more playful. I
right,
mean, what
that's what
it
I thought, okay,
plays with words so much
yeah,
more.
yeah,
That Ulysses is more, I mean, more traditional. What does that
yeah.
mean? It's not a traditional book, but, compared to
Oh,
The
I just
Wake,
wanted to clarify, that was
it's
good.
right, it's far more linear than The
Yeah.
Wake.
So
I mean, it is a line.
you went from Portrait, and then you went to Ulysses in the Wake, and then did you consume all the other Joyce kind of, or not really?
No, I did, and we
Oh,
also did Dubliners.
yeah,
And just recently did Dubliners with another group that I was in, which was supposed to be a James Joyce group. So
yeah.
we read Ulysses, we read Portrait, we read Dubliners, but everybody rebelled against the Wake. I absolutely tried to get them to read it, including a woman from Dublin, and who's buddies with who was the scholar who's on the Dublin City Council? He's
David Norris.
Yes, she's buddies with him,
Wow.
and, but they all said, "No," we read 1 paragraph of The Wake, and they said, "Nope, not gonna do it."
Wow. Let me interject really quick. I don't know the theater. You being living in Berkeley, you do it. I attended my first Joyce academic conference with John Bishop. I don't know how many years ago, 20 years ago. He hosted it called Extreme Joyce. And David Norris, I wish I could, this theater, this nice little wood theater in Berkeley, wood walls, is really beautiful theater. David Norris performed some of The Wake in that theater for all of us.
No, no kidding. Oh,
It's so
dang,
funny
Jerry.
all these connects we have. But now so let's go into Joyce, and you can suss out knowing all the other Joyce too. What's your take on epiphanies and everydayness? It's a phrase that Joyce uses. What does it mean to you?
To me, epiphanies is like an awakening. It's like not enlightenment in the Buddhist sense. Which I'm not sure I believe in that anyway, but it's an extreme awakening.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me. And I remember using it, somebody in the Wagner group, and they thought I was talking about a religious, the religious Catholic epiphany. and didn't get the concept of epiphanies as Joyce used it.
Yeah.
It's a change of life awakening in my mind.
Yeah. And then this is another stupid question. How much of the wake do you get and how much did Joyce get? Like 0 to 100%, just off the top of your head.
How much did Joyce get?
How
I think
much yeah,
I think Joyce got it all. I think he knew. I mean, I think he knew exactly what he was doing, and he had fun doing it. And you know, the fact that he has such obscure stuff in there,
yeah,
he had to have researched it. How much do I get?
yeah.
Um, After our discussions, I get a lot.
Right. So
Before our discussions, I get very little.
yeah,
Before our, our Zoom meetings, I used to listen to it and read it at the same time. And that kind of fogged up my brain instead of helping it. For if
yeah,
I just listened to it, then it's just fun, but it's sounds. It's
yeah,
more sounds than meaning. But when we read it together as in our groups, then I get a lot.
yeah. Okay, here's back to portrait. I will try to express myself in some mode of life or art as freely as I can and as wholly as I can, using for my defense the only arms I allow myself to use: silence, exile, and cunning. What is Joyce talking about in your what do you think he's talking
Say
about
it
most?
again. It's not a
Yeah,
something I remember.
it's the main 3 things he's saying. His tools are silence, exile, and cunning. I will try to express myself in some mode of life or art as freely as I can and as wholly as I can, using for my defense the only arms I allow myself to use: silence, exile, and cunning. Those 3 words. What does silence mean? What does exile mean? And what does cunning mean, in your opinion?
Okay, in my opinion of what Joyce was saying, what do I think he's saying? Silence is hard for me to imagine. I do not see Joyce as somebody who remained silent about anything. I mean, how many lawsuits did he have? Right? I don't think he was silent.
Yeah,
Um, Exile, clearly. This is
yeah,
self-exile. That's
yeah.
when he wrote Ulysses and right, he was in where was he? He wasn't
Trieste
in
or
when he wrote Ulysses.
oh, in Paris maybe,
Yeah,
or
I think. I'm not sure.
yeah, I'm not
Um,
sure.
anyway, he was in exile, and that makes sense because you have some distance. I mean, I think of Thomas Wolfe, Look Homeward Angel. He did not write that in exile. And then he was exiled because everybody hated him because
Yeah,
they knew exactly who they were in that book. Uh, but he could write from a safe distance,
yeah,
and without necessarily being influenced, because right, he released it episodically
yeah,
without being yelled at or influenced by what other people were thinking about it. I'm sure it got back to him eventually. So with some distance and cunning, I think he is cunning. I think you see more cunning in the wake than in Ulysses, but he's got his characters in Ulysses very thinly disguised. And I mean, for me, the most cunning person in Ulysses is Malachi. Well, oh, this is terrible. Buck Mulligan. He's
Buck Mulligan.
very cunning, and I
Yeah,
think the character is cunning, and
yeah,
I think Joyce was commenting on stuff through, for example, Buck Mulligan, actually through all of his characters, and he used cunning by commenting on things that he experienced or things about Ireland that he hated through
Yeah.
these characters. He was so angry about um, Ireland.
What's another word for cunning? What is he saying with that word, cunning?
Cunning is, I mean, it's like foxy cunning, not foxy in the sense of, hot,
Foxy.
foxy, but
Good.
cunning, kind of sly,
Fly.
um, not direct.
Yeah.
If you use cunning, you're using a little bit of guile. Um, it's there's a little subterfuge there and playfulness, I would say.
Yeah.
When you're using cunning, and it's when I think of cunning, I think of trying to outwit something or somebody.
Yeah. That was really good, Tamar. But I want to go back to the quote because this is one of the major things McLuhan learned from Joyce. And he said, if you want to understand me, Marshall McLuhan, you got to know all of Joyce and all of the symbolist poets. So here's what he says in this line: using for my defense the only arms I allow myself to use, which is he's kind of learning that Marshall's probe or percept was everything we invent extends some humanness. So knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera or projector extends our eyelid.
Hmm.
And then maybe even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, extends consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Either if it's the keyboard or the pen, what humanness do you extend with the writing utensil?
Hmm. Um, okay, I don't write with the pen anymore because I inherited my father's handwriting, his Teutonic handwriting. It's terrible, it's illegible. Um, so it's the screen and the keyboard. And this actually gets me back to film, because for the tool for me as a film student and also thinking about writing a screenplay or whatever,
Yeah.
it was the screen, it was getting to the other side of the screen.
Oh
It's
my God.
always about the other side of the screen, which is like the other side of the brain or the other side of your eyes, what's behind your
Yeah.
eyes. And, that you can talk about that with the proscenium stage and curtains and all of that. So the computer, and I never really thought about this before, but the computer it's primarily the screen. The keyboard is just the synapse that gets me to the
Yeah.
words on the screen. And so I'm thinking it might be getting to the other side of the screen, which could be your subconscious.
Yeah. You really touched on a lot there. McLuhan said, a lot of people say, what does film extend? When I ask them that question, they'll go, oh, memory or the eye. And McLuhan said, well, the film extends your foot because you're traveling. And I
Oh,
like when people they go deeper than the obvious. So what does the writing utensil extend for you is the screen being the other side, this otherness that you can't reach. It's extending something like the unknown almost. That's what
it
you're saying.
is.
It's
And
extending the unknown.
I
And so,
picture it in my brain. And you said it was McLuhan who says to know me is to know Joyce and the symbolist poets?
McLuhan said, if you want to get me, it's hard to get McLuhan, but a lot of people can get him pretty good, and that's fine. But to really get him, most McLuhanites don't get into the wake. They go, oh no, that's kooky. And they don't realize that's where Marshall got a lot of his stuff was the symbolist and the wake. So it's just another way of getting. But I have to tell you one other thing because Frank Zappa put Joyce as an influence on his first album listed him, and he says in a song, he says, "You don't want to know what's behind my eyes."
Yes.
It's a really heavy line that just sort of slips by because we all have this thing happening in our behind the other side of the screen. And then it's how much do you empower it by putting action to it or letting it fester or letting it just slip by, and that's what movies do. They put stuff in on the screen that you might go, "Oh, that's something that I had in my inner thoughts once. How'd you get that?"
It's really interesting you're saying that about, when getting behind my eyes. I mean,
Yeah,
people will say to me, or, I just read your mind. It's like, no, that is a terrifying place to be. You do not want to read my mind.
you don't wanna
And
read the
it is, I mean, that's why it's hard for me. It's why it's very hard to write about personal stuff because it gets to the other side of the screen. It gets to what's
Right,
inside your brain,
right.
and it's scary. I
Yeah,
think as human beings, we very often spend a long time spend as much time trying not to think about things as we
yeah.
do to think about things.
That's a really good point. That is the resonating interval between the known and the unknown. There's something in the middle, that in betweenness. That's where all the juicy nut meat is. But we want to go, oh, this is words. This is what this means. Oh, and that's fantasy. But there's something in between that resonates with both the known and the unknown.
And I think that's what psychedelics are about, because
Yeah,
then you can get to the unknown. I did not spend a lot of time doing psychedelics because I had some very, very, very bad trips. I mean, freakouts.
yeah,
Um, and so was not able to um, enjoy
yeah.
what they can do. Um, but I know that the people around me were really getting into parts of their brain that were not accessible to them.
Yeah, dig it. Read the book, How the Hippies Took Acid and Invented the Internet. It's like, uh-oh. It is a real book and it's true. But anyways, here's the other line from Portrait. I would love to hear your thoughts. Welcome, O life. I go to encounter for the millionth time the reality of experience. So that's what we're talking about. Like, what's the reality? And to forge in the smithy of my soul the uncreated conscience of my life. I mean, there's so much packed in there. What does it mean to forge in the smithy of my soul? That's one part. The uncreated conscience of my race. What does
Well,
that mean?
first, let me say that I have always wanted a refrigerator magnet that has that quote.
Oh, that is cool.
Always, always. And it's too much to get on a refrigerator magnet. But
Oh, I
anyway,
wait, Tamar. My friend makes magnets and he loves it. I'm going to send that to him to make that into a magnet because he
please,
will do.
I'll buy one. And, I think I saw maybe it was a Far Side cartoon. The reason I want the magnet
Yeah,
is because I think did you like the Far Side, or do you
yeah,
like
I
the
know
Far
about it. Yeah,
Side?
yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
great fan. I think
yeah,
that he had somebody looking at a refrigerator magnet with one of his, women,
yeah,
the middle-aged woman looking at that on the refrigerator, and I loved it, and I want a refrigerator magnet that says that.
yeah.
Okay, no, it's one of my favorite lines, and a lot of people's from the book, and it's really dense. So I think when he says "my race," I think he means the human race.
Yeah,
I hope that's what he means. He
yeah.
clearly does believe in a soul, and you know, I need. Here's where I need the words in front of me, but to
Right. Well,
for
it's smithy of he's saying to forge the smithy of my soul. What does that mean? To mold it or to what are you doing when you're forging the smithy of your soul?
Um, what I always thought he meant was that using his words, his creativity, which for him is words,
Yeah.
to forge something. His soul kind of is the smithy,
Yeah.
because from his perspective, his words and his concepts and his meanings and are coming from his soul. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is all about welding. I had a friend who was a welder,
Yeah.
and I mean, in that case, he's creating tangible objects.
Yeah.
But Joyce is creating um, literary objects or
He's
literary work.
creating books, but it is all words and language are metaphorical. So it seems as though it's like a double thing. It's actually, I'm creating a book, but the book has more than just printed letters on paper. There's more to it because then the uncreated conscience. What's an uncreated conscience?
Boy, I think of that as like the child's brain.
The
Um,
child's brain.
so
Yeah.
no, not necessarily, or to try to get away from your preconceptions. Again, to me, that's getting to the part behind your eyes or on the
Yeah.
other side of the screen.
Yeah. Beautiful. Now, Elman had a great line too. We are learning to be Joyce's contemporaries. So
Who?
there's a couple thoughts here. One is both Zappa and Joyce said all times are happening now. We think, oh no, there's no such thing. It's just, or Chris Marker says, we're escaping time. What is this thing? We have time. Like, isn't the point of life to be here now, live in the moment? Because there's no one moment. It's all just time is it's all at onceness, they call it. So is Elman talking about us being in Joyce's time or being in an all at onceness, or just any thoughts on that line? We are learning to be Joyce's contemporaries.
Well, first of all, about who we are at any point in time is who we were from our
Yeah.
beginning, from birth. I mean, for some people, it may mean before birth.
Yeah.
I just but who we are at any point in time is a compilation, of everything that has come before, for us.
Yeah.
And maybe the human race, if
Yeah.
in terms of evolution. But, to that we are becoming Joyce's contemporaries, I don't think he meant going back into Joyce's times. I think he may be more, contemporary in terms of Joyce's mind, not his time.
His mind. Yeah. Very interesting because this is even follows it deeper. The two questions are basic. Is archiving more innate or more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive? But we're going to go off on a tangent because it's following what we just said. This is Charles Baudelaire.
Oh,
If you
okay.
try to make a statement long, deep, and rich, it will age very fast. If you try to only own the day you're talking, it will last forever. Really poetic sort of saying, be here now, right? That's like Ram Dass, live in the moment, be here now. Okay, then why do we have to go ahead? You can
Oh,
react
I
to
would say kinda.
that.
Not, who am I to argue with Baudelaire? But and I went through a period of reading all the symbolist poets. I just love
Yeah,
the symbolist poets and the artists. And there's actually, well, the symbolist opera. But um, okay, a colleague and a mentor of mine when I was a reporter would talk about reading a particular reporter's writing, and he said you could see her gritting her teeth as
yeah,
she was writing,
yeah,
trying to write something, poetic and deep and whatever, making it prosaic as opposed to straight reportage.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing I thought of when you read the Baudelaire quote. If you try too hard to make it into poetry, then it's no longer poetry.
Yeah.
There's that some of it, and I don't want to say like autonomic writing or automatic writing. It shouldn't just come out. Um, it needs to have some form and thought behind it. But if you think too hard, you miss it. It's like sometimes if you look at um, an impressionist painting, if you just look at it straight and pick apart the pieces, you don't really see it. Doesn't talk, at least not for me. It doesn't always talk to me. Sometimes I need to squint and
Yeah.
make it a little blurry,
Yeah.
and then it talks to me. And I do that actually in real life sometimes. If I'm looking at something and I can't literally see the forest for the trees, and I have to squint, not because I'm nearsighted, but I squint because it makes it like an impressionist painting, and then I see stuff that I miss if I just look right at it and try to parse it. Does that make sense?
It made a lot of sense because it will lead right into this. Well, I love David Lee Roth said, "Here today, gone later today." So this is this this whole idea of trying to live here now. But the word archive is etymologically rooted in 1400s to keep safe, free from harm. And then 200 years later, it's what we think of it, records preserved as evidence. So, it even goes deeper. It's from archon, town hall, building to be the first. But this whole idea is, why do we need to save stuff? I know it's evident because you got to know history. We're readers. We love to know the past. But why do we have to save stuff when the point of life is to live in the moment? And even Wyndham Lewis said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So it's like this
Uh,
back to Ram Dass, be here now. But then the Egyptians put stuff in their coffin with them. And so why do we think we have to save stuff? And I mean, I love the futurists, the Italian art movement. They say destroy all museums and libraries. Even though I go to a library every day and I love it, I love the fact that they were able to come up with that idea. So is this whole idea of archiving more innate in humans or more invented?
oh no, I think it's innate. I mean,
Yeah,
why did cave people draw on the caves?
yeah,
Um, so that was an archive.
yeah.
Uh, for I don't think it was just an expression of creativity. It was partly that, but I think it's for other people to see or learn or whatever. And going into an archive or a library, you feel like you're. I mean, why do we go? I was in uh, uh, London this summer, and I went to the underground bunker where Churchill was basically headquartered during World War II. Why do we go there? Why do we want to see it? Why we got to walk through the hallways and touch the walls? It's like touching history. I think it might be the other way around. Instead of being here now, it brings the past alive.
Yeah,
Um,
brings us alive. Wow. But do you have plans for your own archive? You have notes, you have documents, you have stuff that, we all have boxes of stuff. And you have someone just like, hey, if I die, do whatever you want? Or is there some plan with your own personal archives?
Oh, no plan whatsoever. I do have archives. It's if I ever want them, if I ever need to refer to something, if I ever, again, write my memoirs, maybe I will, maybe I won't. It's there. So I can refresh my memory, or if I need specific times or dates or whatever, or sometimes just reading stuff from my past brings back memories and emotions that I might have buried or forgotten. But for what happens after, I don't have children. My I'm the youngest in my family. I'm the last one. When I die, that's the end of the line.
Yeah.
And nope, I don't care what happens. If people want it, they can do whatever they want with it. If they want to line their bird cages or make airplanes with it, and when they find it, they can do that. If they want to read them, they can do that too.
Yeah. But when you meant it's physical printed matter in buildings, or is this all digitized?
No, these are all physical things. I have an
Right.
attic, um, which, I keep boxes of stuff
Right.
in.
Right.
And I actually go to it every once in a while. I was trying to
Yeah.
remember the street I lived in when I lived in London in the 70s. And
Yeah.
it's a big deal to get into the attic because I have to get the big tall ladder from outside and bring it in. And I mean, it really is a huge, there's no way to get up there without dragging my ladder in from the yard. And it's a, 10-foot ladder. And I'm 5 foot. So anyway, but if the stuff is up there, if I ever need it or want it.
Yeah.
And so, honestly, what happens after I die, I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah. Well, you touched on this, Tamar, and I really appreciate your time here. I hope you can go. Can you go a little longer?
Sure, sure.
Good. George Manupelli, a film hero of mine, he actually started the Ann Arbor Film Festival over 60 years ago. His mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas said, there is no self expression. And Cecil Taylor, jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle, and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self expression, or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
Oh, I think it's self-expression. Um, to call, I mean, it requires you to have some sort of knowledge, not knowledge of, but belief in metaphysical stuff. If you think you're a vehicle, and I'm a pragmatist. I don't think I'm a vehicle for anything. I think it's I mean, it might indirectly be a vehicle. For example, if I'm going to work on my father's memoirs, then I'm a vehicle for my father's memories.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything, at least for me, I can't speak to other people.
Right.
I don't think something passes through me and makes me do what I do. I think I need to dredge it up.
Right.
And
And
maybe
so,
that's why it's so much harder for me to write than maybe a lot of people where they get into the zone. I don't get into the zone.
yeah. And so, can art making be egoless?
No. Okay, let me when I used to do martial arts, I did Aikido, and from there I got into Zen meditation because of the focus. It helped my Aikido get much better.
Yeah.
And I left it all because I realized what it looked like to me is that people were they were saying, I have less ego than you do. It became a matter of your ego is having less ego than someplace else, and it just seemed than somebody else. It seemed completely contradictory to everything that we were supposed to be doing. And so I finally said, nah, I don't, this is not it's not what I'm being taught. Of course, they're humans, they're frail, but that went for all the high level teachers, the gurus, the senseis. Um, so I don't, we are ego. That's the us. No, I don't believe you can create art without ego. Why would anybody want to create art without putting themselves in it?
Yeah.
And why would anybody want to see it? Why would somebody go uh, to a specific artist to look, if you're a Duchamp fan, for example, or Jean Arc, or whatever, whoever, um, Renoir, um, Rembrandt, why would you want to see this particular artist if the particular artist is not in that artist's work? I think we as viewers or appreciators want the artist's ego in there.
Well, that's like John Lennon saying when he read The Wake, he felt like he was talking to a friend.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so those 3 questions I wanna ask you going back to Joyce. What role do you think intention played in Joyce's creative process?
Oh my God. In Ulysses, he created a schema. It was all intention. He had colors, he had, body parts, um, that came before the book, not after it, I think. Isn't that right? The schema came
Yeah,
first.
yeah,
So that if you are creating a schema, that is all intention. Um, for Finnegan's Wake, I can only guess, but because he what 70 languages in there, he knew what everything meant. Um, I think it's intent. I mean, I'm sure there are times where things just flowed for him, but I think that's got to come from some intent, even if he wasn't conscious of it. But I think he was conscious of everything he did. I don't think Finnegan's Wake was an accident.
yeah, and then back to Duchamp saying, uh, you can't have art without an audience. How much do you think Joyce was thinking of his reader when he was writing, like, Ulysses in The Wake?
Oh, I think he was. What's that famous quote of his? The scholars will be arguing about my stuff
Yeah,
for years, decades. So I think he was thinking of the reader.
yeah,
And
and
that's also, there's his ego.
there's his ego, but again, it seems as though he is sitting in Paris writing The Wake, and he's just listening to shortwave radio, and it's coming through him, sort of like what Bob Dylan says, "Oh, I'm just a radio reception, and it's just coming through me." How much is that vehicle idea, or they call it, the muse or the vehicle, happening in Joyce's case?
Who, as somebody who hasn't really touched the muse, I have to correct something. I have gotten into the zone sometimes. So I guess maybe I've been touched by, or I've touched the muse. I don't
Yeah,
even know what. I mean, I know what it means in general, but
yeah,
personally, I really don't know what it means. Um, I think you have to have some compulsion to do this.
yeah,
And so if we can turn vehicle into compulsion,
yeah,
then yes, I'll say that. Because where does the compulsion come from? My initial thought is from someplace deep in your subconscious.
in
Um,
yeah. It's like, Lakoff says, we're operating, 80% in the sub or unconscious. It's like, it seems as though this time with me and you, we're both very conscious. But how much is there something operating with us and words coming out of our mouth that's not conscious?
well, I think there must be, because you said I was anticipating some of your
Well,
questions.
I said, I you have ESP because it's almost like everyone flows, because this one is like, I spoke with Michael Apted 40 years ago. I says, "Why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast?" And most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it really flourished in the 80s with MTV. And Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. But I asked this question with a bias tomorrow. I say, can we really learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Um, I would say it's the latter. And I'm saying this because since the internet, I think our attention spans, people spend a lot of time on the internet, are smaller or shorter.
Yeah.
And so you have to take in information more quickly because it's coming at you more quickly. But that also reminds me of this great line, or thing from Woody Allen. about speed reading, where he said, you know, I took Evelyn Wood's speed reading course. And then the person he's talking to says, "Oh, yeah, well, what are you reading?" And he said, um, War and Peace. And the other person said, "What is it about?" And he said, "Russia." I'm not Woody Allen. I'm not as
Yeah,
funny. He said it in a great way, but
yeah.
the faster the information is coming at you, and the faster you're trying to take it in. I don't think you can. I mean, maybe on some level, it's reaching you, but yeah, I think that we're not taking it all in.
Well, the hidden question really is it literally possible to multitask?
It is. Oh, okay. In other words, does your brain stop doing one thing while you're doing the other thing? Um, no, I think you can multitask, but I think you don't do as well at either of those things if you whatever how, and any of the things that you're multitasking. I think you do much better. One, ooh, I just lost you. One would do much better at anything if they just do that thing.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
listen,
it was Georgia O'Keeffe who's talked about she never like listened to music when she was painting or when she was cooking, because evidently she was a very good cook. Um, and when she listened to music, she would just sit down and listen to music. She didn't do anything else. It wasn't background for her.
okay.
And I can understand that, and I like to do that, but the problem is because I have so many other things to do, that means I never listen to music at home because I can't sit down.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to, at least right now, to do it, so I have to go out to do it.
Yeah, and at least you know that you can go listen to music by putting that time aside. You don't like just,
Exactly.
you know, yeah, that music's too ritual. I mean, too sacred. It's like Walter Pater said, all art aspires to the condition of music, like painting, poetry, architecture, dance wishes it can be as cool as music.
No, I agree. I think it's the most esoteric of
Yeah,
all of the arts and
yeah,
hits you on so many more levels
yeah,
than the other. And not to say that, the other media don't hit you in various places,
yeah,
but there's something that music touches that nothing else does.
yeah. Well, I asked for 90 minutes. We're almost 2 hours, and I wanted to propose we do a part two because we only got through a third of the questions. It's really been fun, but maybe we could close out this part with a couple more and then plan another part, maybe 2 or 3, 4 months down the road. Is that okay?
Sure. This was
Great.
fun.
Great. So here we go. This is my oldest question. I didn't make it up. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Oh, compromise. Um, I mean, if we're gonna live with other people, it's com ah, it's compromise. Okay, wait, I may need to take that back. We all wanna think that we're gonna live by our convictions and do the right thing.
Yeah,
Um, you know what? I think each one of those is more important in certain circumstances.
yeah,
I can't say that one is more important than the other. Each one has its place. It's like you choose your fight. And for some fights, conviction is more important. Um, and I'm saying this as somebody who has not always chosen her fights carefully. And a friend of mine once said that on my grave, it's going to say, but it was my right of way. In other
wow.
words, right, that like, I'm going to do what I think is right, even if it kills me. Um, and other times, there are times where I should have compromised and I didn't. And I think if you're going to live in a if you're going to live in society, you have to compromise at least sometimes.
Yeah. It's funny because tomorrow I ask these questions because I want people to answer the way I want to hear them answered, but I don't fight it. I want them to open up my mind and give me other perspectives. And that's the other one when most people say, first thought, best thought, you said compromise right off the top. Most people, 80% say conviction. And when someone says compromise off the top, I'm like, thank God that there's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right. But I love it because it is like we're already born convicted coming out of the womb. But again, it's that we invent these two different binary things, different things, and then we think we have to decide. Usually it's both and neither, and it depends on the context.
Exactly. And I love what you just said, that we are convicted
Yeah.
coming out of the womb. That sounds like we are in the prison of life.
You come out, man. You're like, that's why Captain Beefheart said, I'm going back in. Or like Robin Williams says, womb service. I come out. Okay, here's my other oldest question, but I changed it. But before I tell you the change way, you've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role in second?
You're talking about the Pulitzer.
Well, you can do it however you want. You can put in the context you want, but I however you want to call your accomplishments, how do you rate those three things? Whether it's just being a happy person, working with the Wagner group and the wake groups and your animals, or the Pulitzer, or whatever, however you want to put it, how do you rate those three elements in general? If you
Okay.
want, in general. Yeah.
I can't give you numbers or a percentage. I think everything is a little bit of luck. Everything in the world,
Yeah.
kind of luck, coincidence, whatever. What you do with it requires a lot of skill,
Yeah.
and pushing on requires some ambition.
Yeah. Well, that
So, I mean, I could say that about any getting into search and rescue was kinda sorta luck.
Yeah. You mean search
Skills.
search and rescue is what you call your work with animals.
And well, no, it's not with animals. It's I mean, I use it's searching for people.
Oh, search
People. Yeah, it's I work with a dog. He's not certified yet, so can't yet go on missions, but,
it's
it
both
is.
an animal and the dog. Search and rescue is working with both animals and dog and
No,
humans.
no, so but the canine search and rescue is using a canine to find people who are lost or dead.
Oh,
Um,
I see.
yeah, so and, I do specifically wilderness search and rescue, not urban,
I
and it's looking for people who are lost or who have perished in the wilderness,
is that
and
called is that canine handler?
yeah, I'm a canine handler, so I.
Canine handler means search and rescue where you use a dog to find a lost
Oh, no,
human.
canine handler could be, anybody who is working with the dog in any capacity, but in my particular, you know,
Specialist
avocation, I
is
am handling a dog specifically in
for
on in those circumstances to
I see.
find
Right,
somebody in the wilderness.
right. So
But
that's funny because Gary Player, the golfer, said the more you practice, the luckier you get.
oh,
And then that second part, skill, a lot of people are kind of trying to be humble. They don't want to go, well, I've accomplished a lot because one, I'm skillful. They don't want to even admit it. They like skill's a big part. And I was like, that's all right. You can admit whatever, you can tell me whatever you feel is, to rate the three is ridiculous also because people say, well, there's other words. There's purpose, or the word you use, compulsion, persistence. I just picked those three because I'll tell you why. I used to see, because I'm always trying to refine the questions or reword them or rethink them. So most of 30 years, I asked, is ambition based more on fear or joy? So how would you answer that just off the top of your head? Not yours, but your observations of humans' ambition. Is it based more on fear or joy?
Ooh, joy. I mean, I don't think it's joy. By process of elimination,
Yeah.
I'm going to say fear.
Yeah.
Because ambition, I guess it depends on the context. Again, if you're talking about
It's,
political ambition,
yeah.
I think it's fear.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you're talking about professional ambition, I think it's probably more joy.
Yeah. That's interesting because most people, if I say, is ambition based more on fear or joy? They would say fear. And they would want to be, if they're real positive, they would go, it should be based on joy. But then William Friedkin, who directed The Exorcist,
The
wrote a book
Exorcist.
a
I
couple of years ago.
love
He
that
said,
movie.
he said, Friedkin said, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition.
That ambition and who you know. I would beg to differ, but I think ambition is huge. You've got to push through. You've got to have the, the moxie, I guess, to push through because there's so many barriers.
Yeah. Amazing. So let's close out part one with this one. And I appreciate this. T.S. Eliot said, poetry's outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Oh, it's what language? Probably baby talk. No, what is my inner? It's
I like
no, it's
baby
actually
talk.
my inner dialogue is probably cinematic.
Oh my God. I love both of those. Yeah, it isn't it interesting because how we live in that world, we call it the android meme. It's like humans invent things and then we start imitating the hidden psychic effects of those inventions. So when you say, "Hey, what did you dream last night?" They go, "It was like a Fellini movie."
Oh,
And it's
that is
like
sweet.
before we had movies, how did they describe dreams? So that's why I love The Wake, is because it's not about a dream, it is a
Is
dream.
a dream. That's it's
When we're reading it out loud with a group of people, it is not like we're dreaming, we're all dreaming together, you know? In fact, Yoko said, "If you dream a dream alone,
Yoko
it."
Ono.
Yeah, Yoko Ono said, "If you dream a dream alone, uh, it's a dream. But if you dream a dream with other people, it can be reality." And that's
Yeah,
what, it's like we're sitting in this theater watching these flickering lights on a screen. It's like we're all dreaming the same dream.
no, that is true.
Yeah.
It also made me think of the Three Stooges when you say we're dreaming together. You know how they would, you see them all, three of them sleeping in bed, snoring. And then
Yeah.
when one turns over, they all flip over. And that's what that reminds me of. I love
That
the
is
Three
good.
Stooges.
To go from the to go from Yoko to Three Stooges and then to Harry Smith, he said, "Cinema's the purpose of cinema is to put you to sleep."
No.
But he's talking more like
Oh,
dreaming.
metaphorically put you to sleep.
Metaphorically, you're sleeping and you're dreaming together.
And that is, for me, that's the other side of the screen.
That's what I was trying to get back to, is it's
Yeah.
that other side of the screen thing. So it's like funny because you can't really do this with Zooms where you go like that, but you have to get to the other side of a Zoom screen.
Yeah, no, that just made me feel like I was on a roller coaster. My stomach is still in the air.
But it's been an amazing time, Tamar. I'm so grateful for your time and energy here, and I really learned a lot. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button now, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
This is so much fun, Jerry. I did not know what to expect. and very thought provoking. I mean, literally thought provoking. I had to go and I couldn't answer some of your questions. And no, not necessarily definitive answers on some of them. And I'm going to go away thinking about them.
Good. Yeah, because when I asked my mom once, and I says, "Can I interview you?" And she goes, "Yeah, but everything I say today, I might say different tomorrow." I goes, "That's okay. You can
that's,
change."
that's be here now, isn't it?
That's me here now. Exactly. Okay, Tamar, thanks again.
Thanks, Jerry. I'll see you at the next Wake meeting.
I love that.
Okay.
Thanks.